lunch, so listen.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
Post one.
So, here we are. We'll introduce Sarah. So you guys know who I am. And if at any point during the presentation you have a question, just shout it out. I'd rather have a discussion than talk at you all for 45 minutes. So, this is why I think it's important to have standards. And I mean, by standards, I mean things that you always do and things that you always do the same way. So why it's important to do that, and some of the things that I do, a lot of the things that I do to help uphold those standards.
Is that a better spot?
So I want to get one thing right on the table here. I do not consider myself an organized person.
Yeah, right.
I know, all of you at some point have said to
If
me,
you're not organized, the rest of us are.
yeah, you're so organized. How to manage a hurricane of chaos. I described myself this way to Teresa Bogard recently because I'm talking with her about summer pedagogy workshop. Please come to the summer pedagogy workshop. And I said, people tell me I'm organized and I laugh and I say, it's the only way I can think of to manage what is an inner hurricane of chaos. And she roared and she said, it's exactly that. And I'm sure a lot of you could relate. So I do not consider myself an organized person. These are coping strategies. So you all know I run a full-time studio out of my house. I teach private weekly lessons. I also teach group classes approximately every other month. I'm this role. I'm also chair of Greater Rochester Music Teachers of New York State. And I help plan the summer pedagogy workshop. This is just a tip of the iceberg of my piano life, and some of you have heard some nasty rumors that I'm a circus acrobat too.
Are you performing tonight?
I am performing tonight, but also tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
So
night.
I'm performing in a circus show tomorrow night at 7, and tonight at 7, same show. Come to one, you'll see both.
No Sunday?
So I perform kind of semi-professionally in the circus, and I teach circus classes, and I just consider that a hobby. And then I do home renovations, and I've built kitchen cabinets and a deck, and it's ridiculous. It's when you say a hurricane of chaos, I think that about sums it up.
Have you juggled pianos?
Some have suggested to me that I should hang from the aerial silks and play the piano, and I think that could work if I did it, Amadeus style.
If you've never seen the show, go. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're pirates tonight, so that'll be fun. So let's. Sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse. There it is. We'll see how this works. Will it work? Maybe I can put it back on. I don't know. So, because I'm a hurricane of chaos, I'm always looking for ways to streamline, because otherwise I really would be overtaken and overwhelmed, and it just wouldn't work. So standardizing processes and expectations in the studio help me work smarter and harder. It helps me communicate with my students, their parents, with you all, and make me a little bit more likable and not that person that you're like, oh gosh, you just gotta get your stuff together. So by being aware of the standards that I have, this lets me create systems to support those standards. Let's see. So when I'm talking about standards and the systems that I use to support those standards, I have two big categories, pedagogical and business. But before we get to the fun stuff, let's think a little bit about the definition of standard. I haven't figured out how to get my mouse to do both things. So let's see. These definitions are from Merriam-Webster. First definition. You always have to look up the definition from the dictionary when you give a presentation. The first definition is not what I was thinking when I first had the idea for this presentation. So it's a tangible thing. A conspicuous object, such as a banner, formally carried at the top of a pole and used to mark a rallying point, especially in battle or to serve as an emblem. And when I first read that, I was like, oh yeah, a standard, like a big pole of flag, okay. And then the next definition, finally I read through the first two definitions which had to do with the flag, and then I got to the third definition, which is the abstract idea we're talking about today. Something established by authority, custom, or general consent as a model or example. So I thought it was useful to think about the first one because I love etymology, word history and development. And if you think about the purpose of that standard, that rallying point, it's to bring the army together. Physically, but also in their purpose and their meaning. An abstract standard also brings individuals together. A standard is something that brings multiple individuals into agreement. So this could be a standard of measurement. Nope, not that one. Sorry guys. This could be a standard of measurement, like a measuring cup. The width of piano keys. How many times have we heard students go, oh, well, my piano's different at home? Well, no, that's a standardized measurement. The width of piano keys is a standardized measurement. It could also be a jazz standard. The Chopin preludes are from the standard repertoire. So these are things that we all agree on. And so they bring us into agreement. They bring us into common ground with each other. And I think that is so incredibly important if we're going to get anything done. I love productivity. I love getting things done. And then the other thing that reminds me of standards and why they're important, I don't think Ingrid Clearfield coined this phrase, but she said, so I'm going to give her credit. People rise to the standards set for them, regardless of how high or low those standards are. So you set your standards and people will go, oh yeah, that's what I gotta do. Especially kids. Why doesn't anyone do that more so well? What you said,
We're sick to how low.
yes, well, it's easier, I think we know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so whether or not you're aware of it, you're using standards. Right? We all have different standards, but by being aware of what you consider your standard, you can consistently practice benchmarks of excellence in your studio with your community. Communicating your standards helps you have better relationships with your students and their parents. You can communicate fair expectations within your studio, like these are my policies on tuition and payment schedule and attendance. I have a standard on whether or not a piece is ready to be passed because students, especially I deal with a lot of young kids. Why can't this pass? Well, I had to help you remember how to play it. So my rules for whether or not a piece is ready to be passed is I can't help you. You have to be able to do it on your own. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I like to foster a healthy mindset, but it has to have very few mistakes. 1 to 3 small mistakes. 4, no, come back next week. That's the rule. They all know that's the rule, and the parents know that's the rule. A standard is also helps you explain to a parent whether a student is ready or not to perform on a recital. Standards between you all and each other and myself is we all agree on how a student should score on an audition, or we hope we do. We have discussions about this, but we come to an agreement on what the standard is for passing Gold Cup, for scoring a 90 or higher on student achievement program or something like that.
Tasha, do you have write L on your computer? Write L. You can push that too.
Oh, well, the thing is, it's doing different things up here, but then it doesn't do the same thing. It's not doing the same thing on my computer.
I see.
Yeah. Thank you, though. Yeah. So if we all have the same standards, we have common ground, and when you're participating in a big event like the Gold Cup, it's a huge event, so I like to use that as an example. Things run a lot more smoothly, and people like working with you. Let's see. So, the title of this presentation is wordy enough, but when I proposed the idea to Sarah back last May, she was like, you should really present. I was like, well, this is on my mind. I didn't think about the fact that there's another S word, systems. So a standard is the abstract, this is what we want. And a system is actionable. A system is, this is how we make that happen. So let's go on to systems. We've got pedagogical and business. There we go.
Have you tried a number? Because I see they're numbered on the bottom.
Oh, well, I think wherever my mouse is, wherever my cursor is, it applies it to that screen.
I see.
Mhm. I did just print out my notes, so I'll just go off of those, so I'm not such a pain in
But it
So,
actually helps us to see it.
no worries, okay. So here are some of my pedagogical systems. I've stolen a lot of things from a lot of teachers, all of y'all included. This is the one thing in 15 plus years of teaching that I didn't steal. I just came up with this. And also, you know, a lot of things that you do early on, they slide off by the wayside of greater experience. This is something I've been doing for 15 years, and it's great. Every phrase is bracketed with a color. This happens in the first lesson on a piece. You know, we sight read it through, or we play it by rote through, and then I say, okay, what color do you want the first section to be? What color is the first phrase going to be? So it's important that the student chooses it. Then we find the ones that are exactly the same. If there's something that's slightly different, that measure or two gets a dotted line. Of course, then we get into, well, this one has an upbeat and that one doesn't. Well, the one with the upbeat gets a dotted line. Oh, there's a third type, we get a zigzag line. And then the students get creative and they're like, well, I want this one to have a cloud shape. Sure, great, whatever helps you remember. But we're already, it's just really pattern recognition. And then of course, different phrases get different colors, similar phrases get similar colors. I like to do transpositions in the same color families, so dark blue, light blue, and kids just love color. It's a lot of fun. And I could give a talk on this, but not today. So what I found and why I keep doing it is because I have kids who are not reading on staff yet, but maybe their recital piece is on staff and we color code it and they can already figure out the phrases and the patterns, even though they can't read those specific notes on the notation on staff. I've had a bunch of kids say to me, oh my gosh, this just helps so much with my memory. Yeah, because it's teaching you the phrasing and the form. So they're developing an intuitive knowledge of that as well. And then I've also found that if I fail to do the color coding, not always, but sometimes, they're not practicing as efficiently. Because this breaks it down into chunks. And then I can say, that yellow section's gotta be 7 eyes. Please do on-purpose pause practice with the red section. So then it's manageable chunks, and they're doing less of always starting at the beginning, which we all hate, of course. I'm a nut job. I do lesson plan, and by that I mean write down every lesson, document every lesson that I teach. It's not fancy, it's not long, it's not a huge list. This is my little lesson planning notebook. I can fit like 3 lessons per page, so I make sure I have six concepts in every lesson. Warm up or technique, sight reading, theory, reviewing already learned material, learning something new, and when applicable, performance material. And you might be thinking, holy guacamole, how does she do this in a 45-minute lesson, much less a 30-minute lesson? Concepts next, right? If they're learning a new piece, they're probably doing some sight reading. Every time I say theory, she thinks I'm saying Siri. And I don't get to every single concept in every single lesson. But I also have a system for just like I write a little exclamation point next to something. You guys can pass this around if you want. You can see my inner workings. I put a little exclamation point next to something if we didn't get to it that week. So then I know next week, come on, it's been 2 weeks since we got to this thing. you see a lot of exclamation points, and I'm like, oh, we better do that sight reading. So these ideas nest, and especially with the younger kids, I'm not using the word theory. This is your theory assignment. This is my plan. This is for my eyes only, and so I jot down next to theory for Lucy. Let's talk about measures this week. Let's do a bunch of activities that teach her the concept of measures. So this just helps me provide better education. It's written on my whiteboard. These 6 concepts are written on my whiteboard. And the kids know that that's what I'm trying to get to. And so they'll be like, hey, have we done our sight reading yet? That's great, right? Like, kids love checkboxes. They will help me move along because, as you can see, I like to talk. So this was a gradually developed system. I did not always write down lesson plans. Janine Jacobson, I've gotten so many things from great piano pedagogy workshops in the summer. When Janine Jacobson was here, she said, I always write a lesson plan. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me. So I started just making short little lists of what I was going to do with each student. And I started doing this in 2017. And over the course of 2 years, very gradually, I started to notice, when you zoom out and it's not just Camptown races, page 28 in the theory, and C major pentascales, that's a warm-up, reviewing an already learned material, and a theory page. Okay, it's these 6 concepts. So I gradually became aware of a standard that I had and developed this system to functionalize it, to make it doable. So, do I have practice charts? Of course I have practice charts. These are assignment-specific reflection of the lesson plan. So the lesson plan has those 6 concepts, but I'm not going to send most students home with a sight reading assignment. I am going to send students home with a warm-up or technical exercise, just like we did in the lesson, 1 or 2. I am going to send students home with a short-term learning piece, a lesson book piece, 1 to 2 weeks to learn, maybe 1 to 3 of those. And when applicable, a long-term learning piece, such as a performance piece, 1 to 2 of those. Theory doesn't show up on every, written theory doesn't show up on every practice chart because I don't do that with the young kids, but I do those with the older kids. Do the kids read the practice charts? Your mileage may vary. Kids don't read practice charts, but parents sometimes do. And do I have other ways to remind kids what the assignment is? Yes, I do. But because I'm doing this for the entire studio, it gives me a level of accountability. And if they come back and they say, well, I didn't do such and such, I say, well, look at your practice chart. So it gives me accountability, and it gives them accountability, and it gives their parents accountability. It's a way for me to communicate with them during the week when they're not with me. Syllabus. This one I just started doing the last year or 2. So the practice charts and the lesson planning, that's a zoomed in weekly view of what's going on. But the syllabus is a semester long or school year long view. So it's less detailed, but it helps me really stay on track of timelines. Remember, I'm not organized. If I know that the recital is happening week 15, we better be picking out pieces for elementary students. Week 5, and for the older students, we better be picking out pieces week 1 or maybe the previous semester. So it helps me a lot. I have been handing it out to parents. It's not useful for kids. They don't even know what the word syllabus means. I discovered that and I was like, here's your syllabus. No, that's not it. But I think it's helpful for parents because that gives them the ability to follow up and be home support and say, oh, sorry, I see it's week 4. Have they picked out recital pieces? Oh, I see the recital is week 15. Insert helpful phrase there. I also think it's really good for parents to see what goes into planning these lessons and to know that I have a long-term view for their kid that lasts at least a semester, if not a school year, and probably multiple years. So like I say, it's a newer document. I've been typing this up for a year or two, and I will continue to hand it out to parents for another couple of years to see whether they're reading it and whether it's useful. We all know that the more things you give people to read, the less they're going to read them. And then you have to give them more things to read. So it's a balance, and I'll probably, doing this presentation made me aware of a lot of things that I'm doing, made me more aware. I thought, wow, I should really look at the documents, the existing documents that I'm handing out, and see if I can consolidate some of them. Like maybe the school year calendar with a list of dates, maybe that becomes part of the syllabus, and then it's one document. And yeah, I'll keep you posted on whether or not I continue to hand out syllabuses or just do them for me. So as you can hear, I teach performing. Not everybody does. This is my standard. This is, I like the educational goals of teaching and requiring performance. Not everybody does, and that's okay. We need all kinds of different teachers in this community. And the reason why is the topic of another presentation, but in a nutshell, it creates a consistent expectation of the level of polish that I'm expecting, of the standard that I expect. So here are my rules. I have 2 end of semester recitals. Everybody's in that. Gold Cup, everybody who's been studying with me for more than 6 months. And Student Achievement Program, I start to pick out people who are more motivated, or who I think would be more motivated if I gave them a little shove. Other programs like ACS, I can't think of any other right now, but we always have a ton of programs. I say, hey, would you like to do this? If not, fine, it's voluntary. You just can't push too many things. We all know they're all way too busy. But with all the programs that I participate in, voluntary or not, I use that material for the entire studio. So the Student Achievement Program technical requirements, I found that's a great way to just make my entire studio do it, so I know that I'm filling in all the holes. I think I only had 4 or 6 students participate in the Melody Gover recitals, but boy did I have more than 6 playing the music. They all loved it. So, do everything. Don't do everything, implement. So these programs are where I start to get really nutty with spreadsheets. I know that I present as a very tech-savvy person. I don't consider myself so, but I've come to realize that, yeah, I'm a little bit tech-savvy. But you don't have to be a spreadsheet user in order to participate in this program successfully. You don't have to be a spreadsheet user to participate and maintain your sanity. It's just the method that I'm most familiar with. So you use the method that you're most familiar with. But these are all the things I track for every student every year they participate. And if you're counting, that's 13 things. And then there's multiple years of data. So I do use data, and yes, I do find it helpful to have all of those things. Profile docs is very great for some people. That's
Tasha, would you say that, like what Gene sends out, which actually ends up being the score for people, that's sufficient, or do you actually even save more than that?
I save the score that Gene sends out, but I also record it ahead of time.
Okay.
So that I know if I need to correct. Doesn't happen very often. Gene's great. I record the scores that I get for the student achievement programs. Yeah, so that I can let a student know, okay, you've completed 2/3 of the program so far this year, this is what your average is. You can expect to get your trophy if you shape up, or you're gonna wait another year. Question. So, aside from knowing scores, the very biggest pedagogical benefit I've gotten from obsessive record keeping is a personalized teaching repertoire list. I have documented every single piece that I've taught in all of these programs. So maybe I can link to it, see. my gold cup stats thing. So here's intro 1 and the publication that it came from, so that makes my life easier when I'm saying, okay, so-and-so is playing Flying Carpet, so you need to buy Accent on Solos, book 1. And of course, there's a lot of pieces at the lower levels, and then as you get further up in the levels, things start to thin out. But I don't know if any of you ever made, one of your teachers ever made you do, when you were in school, do a repertoire list. Incredibly useful. This is the same thing, but just your teaching repertoire. And so I started doing this because as a newer teacher, starting to participate in Gold Cup, like 6 or 7 years ago, I had already been teaching. There was no standardized curriculum for what pieces you were supposed to teach, and I had a bunch of pieces that I liked to teach, so I started to love what level they were, so that I could refer to them the following year and be consistent and not have Janet Stat looking at me and being like, well, ZD Zebras was EE1 last year, but this year you're saying it's ME2. Fear of being scolded is how this happened. Didn't want to be scolded. I don't know how to pull straight. I don't know how to full screen. I don't know how to full screen this again. See, I'm really not that tech savvy. I'm just gonna go back and, no, we're not gonna do that. We're just gonna leave it like this. This is fun, right? See, not that tech savvy. It's pieces that you like to teach, that you know you like to teach, pieces you know you teach well, pieces that you have for specific concepts that you really like. I really like Mysterious Rider by Melody Bogart. It's a great first 6/8 piece. A great precursor to The Wild Rider. It codifies your teaching style and your philosophy, and it's invaluable. It's really great. I'm aware of other resources besides this self-created resource. Yeah, I refer to Federation manuals. Jane McGraw's publications are gospel, but that's how I keep refreshing and growing this document. This is how I add to it. This is the document of things that I already know. Oh, there we go. This thing. I'm sure a lot of you know about this thing. This thing is not new. It's just new to me. And it's pure gold. It's so great. Peter Mack, I don't know why I didn't know about it until Peter Mack started talking about it last year at Pedagogy. So a huge part of my teaching philosophy, my standard, is teaching students how to practice effectively. Teaching them the correct tools for various different challenges, because we all know that alternating rhythms is maybe not the best way to practice a hymn. But students might not know that. So I've been long years talking with my students about how about this practice game? How about this practice tool? This practice tool goes in your practice toolbox. But it's just sort of mental between myself and the students. Oh, have I ever taught you the on-purpose pause game? Oh, okay, great. Imagine my delight when I was like, oh, someone has documented and published all these things for me. That's great. So I immediately made it required material in my studio. So of course, if you know the guide, you know that there's like 50 different practice strategies in it, and there's an index that tells you, well, if you want to work on accuracy, work on these ones. If you want to work on evenness, do these ones. I'm happy to toss this around. So it gave me a few new strategies. Yes, there are a few of my strategies that actually aren't in there, but when a student and I encounter one, we go, ooh, cool, we got one on her. And we write it on a post-it and we stick it in their guide, so it becomes personalized. Some of the practice games that I use are in there, but under a different name, and a student will go, well, I like your name better. Sure, we write it in. So it becomes personalized. It streamlines my lessons, because then I can not spend minutes of the lesson typing up instructions or handwriting instructions, because I just say, go to number 16. There's detailed instructions. And then it also increases my students' independence, because my goal is to teach myself out of a job. They learn that I'm gonna say, well, have you looked at the practice guide for this problem? Before I give you the answer, have you looked at the practice guide? Oh, you know, you could open that practice guide at home. And they start doing it. So, it improves their practicing at home, theoretically, as well. And there's something else I was going to say about it. I just love this thing. It doesn't get used in every lesson. Are the first graders and the kindergartners using it as much? No, but I'm teaching them how to use it. But it applies to every level of piano. It applies to Book 1, Mary Had a Little Lamb. It applies to the Brahms G minor Rhapsody. So it's not something that they're going to need to, it's not something that they're going to grow out of unless they get really, really, really advanced and go to school for music. I use it sometimes. So they're not going to grow out of it. It's $8. It's $8 and it's on sale right now. It's less than $8 right now. I checked. So, I like the practice guide. Okay. The last fun part. But it'll go quick. I am obsessive. Maybe you've noticed that I like to track things. I like to know, what year my student got their gold cup and what they played that year and whether or not they paid. So, I log hours that I work. I'm the boss, but I do. Last February, just over a year ago, I got home from a vacation and I was like, oh, I don't feel rested. I think I'm burnt out. A week later, oh my gosh, I think I've been burnt out for a while. A week later, oh my gosh, I think I've been burnt out for a few months. A week later, oh my gosh, I think I've been burnt out for years. It was a slow burn. It took a while for me to realize. And so I started obsessively tracking what hours I'm working. And I realized that this strategy could have tragically backfired on me and definitely would not work for everyone. But it actually helped me a lot. Because I realized I really did have full-time work as a musician. That was incredibly validating. I needed that. And then, because I knew that I was going to log the hours that I was working, I was more focused while I was working. And then a bunch of different timer and stopwatch productivity methods out of this. And so I'm still doing it over a year later. I don't know when I'm going to stop. I'm the boss. I get to decide if it's no longer helpful anymore, but I like it.
It's a shame you're not organized, really.
I know. Truly organized. No, really, I have friends that make me feel like a chaos goblin. I have friends that are organized.
Maybe you're a little obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. Really?
Well, it helps. It doesn't help everybody, but it helps me. So again, as you can see, I categorize, I have these few different categories, so at the end of each week, I know how much time I spent on admin, practicing, teaching, yada yada. So it helps me know, okay, well, if I ever want to hire an admin, which I'm probably going to have to do at some point if I continue down this road of craziness, I know how many hours I would need to hire someone for. When I pass on a volunteer position, I can give them good expectations on, well, how much time did I spend doing this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So it's good. If you want to see it, it's this. It's a spreadsheet. It's a list. It's not crazy, but you can see it. All right. And I put a little here. Right here is like, well, I can spend no more than this amount of time on this day on admin stuff. So it's helping me set boundaries.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that you just pointed out, sort of roundabout, that when you decided you realized you had a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that all of us who have our own studios for
Yeah.
years, you have to remember that
Yes.
you're working, and also if you set those work hours, you focus. Those two things are so important
Yeah.
to us to validate for each other, that this is a full-time job, this is what we
Yes.
do. And then the other thing is that we do need to focus, otherwise, it just kind of works into your entire
Yes,
existence.
and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're texting a student at 10 p.m. with practice instructions.
Yeah,
and
and you
you're
can't wait a minute.
writing a duet article at, 7 p.m. on a Saturday or something. Helps, the boundaries help. Spreadsheets, this is just the best way that I'm familiar with for keeping track of all of the achievement program data. I have an income and accounting spreadsheet, student enrollment, attendance, missed lessons. I don't think I'm super obsessive to be keeping track of these things. I think these are just things that you need to keep track of as a business owner, as a teacher. I do not pay for accounting software. I know a lot of us do. I think at some point I'm gonna have to spend a little money to make a little money, but this is how I've gotten myself this far, by being thrifty and doing it on Google Doc spreadsheets, so. I think it's all. Studio policies aren't for everyone, I know. But with a larger studio, I think it really helps because you have your expectations standardized and communicated. Communication really is like so important. And this helps maintain your high standards, and it demonstrates to your clients how professional you are. You are professional, so show them that. I set dates for the entire school year so that parents can rely on our recital is going to be the weekend before Thanksgiving and the weekend before Memorial Day. Because my group classes are every other month, it's a little bit harder for people to work them in because then they fill that time when they don't have group class. But at least the dates are set and hopefully they plan around it. Expected payment schedule. I've set a standard and expectation that tuition increases regularly, so that's communicated in there. There's practice expectations. I promise it's a one-page document. It's a one-paper document, stop saying. But it's really not huge. It's not huge. We all have to write the same email all the time, right? Someone reaches out to you for new lessons. No, I don't take adult students. This is your lesson time for the school year. Please buy this lesson book. This is a pedal extender. This is the best one, but you can get other crappier ones. This is the practice guide. Please buy the practice guide. All of these things, here's summer registration. Please register. All of these things that we have to send emails of, different variations of these emails all the time. I have email templates for these. These are not fancy. It's just a saved draft in my email draft folder, and when I have to send that email, I copy and paste, fill in the blanks, and send it. It's not. Do you want to be on my teacher referral list? If you take adults. Yeah, because I don't prefer not to. So you must think, oh my gosh, to-do lists. To-do lists. Well, I'm trying to be better about to-do lists. This is an area where I have to grow because my to-do list habits are flailing. I have multiple lists. I have a spiral bound notebook in my office. I use the reminders app on my phone. I have a little notepad by my bed. I use the notes app on my phone. There's a whiteboard on my kitchen fridge. Oh yeah, I use the Google note-taking app on my phone. That's 3 different note-taking apps, people. There's a whiteboard in my studio. Sometimes I just type a list somewhere on my computer on some document. I have this tiny little portable whiteboard in my studio. It looks like a spiral-bound notebook, but it's a whiteboard. Does anybody want it? I should really get rid of it. During board meetings, you'll see me just scribbling on agendas. So it's only useful if you consolidate the lists, because sometimes you forget where the list is, and I'm very guilty of that. A humbling thing for me is to realize my memory isn't that great, even though it used to be fantastic. Getting older screams, insert excuse. But if I don't write it down, it doesn't happen, but also if I can't find where I wrote it down, it doesn't happen. So, you know, maybe one big list is the solution, but then you always have to have it with you. And then it gets really overwhelming and maybe you have to sort it. So there's no perfect answer, but, you know, we try to be a little bit wise and conscious about how your to-do list. I'm a little crazy, I'm a little obsessive, but you guys, until this moment, you thought it was a secret, you didn't know, but I've opened myself up to you. I'm very guilty of overcommitting. I'm learning to be better about overcommitting, but I love all the things that I do, and sometimes I overcommit intentionally. I really wanted to do the circus show tonight, and I've been kicking myself for the last month because I'm so stressed, but I'm really excited about it. So I have a lot of energy, and this gives me a sometimes mistaken impression that I can do all the things. I cannot do all the things, but all of these systems help me get through it and figure out how to get a little bit better at overcommitting and overcommit less. Please remember this. Yeah, obviously so important.
But definitely organized.
I would like to push back on that a little bit because
Yeah.
there are some people who may be born to they're organized.
Yeah, I have one student like that.
And there are most people are not organized by nature and they learn how.
Yes.
And they learn what
That's
works for them, and you clearly have taken the time and the steps necessary to learn how to be a very organized person. You are exceptionally organized.
I will say that, thank you for inviting me to be on the board as a recital chair, however many years ago, and nominating and president, because it is through these positions, the necessity
Absolutely.
that I've learned these skills.
And part of your secret to organization is your flexibility, which not everyone I know who is organized is flexible. And that makes a huge difference.
I'm gonna tell my
There-
husband that he's some people think I'm very rigid.
You have to have that center,
That's true.
but then if you understand, okay, this is a time when breaking from that center is necessary, and let's just not.
And yeah, I think that all of these things that I do give me a safety net in order to offer that.
You know, that first
Exactly.
much I noticed about you when you became a president at our meeting, you always got on time, and I appreciate that because sometimes, oh, that's really good.
That's something to try very hard.
No, that's all of that. Who's coming late, next time you come on time.
Yeah. Well, my dad is a software engineer, and he actually, his training is as an aerospace engineer, and then he switched to software. And his hobby is calendrical calculations. What is that? It's time, organizing time, understanding how calendars work on like a thousands of year scale. I think so. I don't really know for sure. But growing up, whenever my mom said, "Oh, we're gonna run off to such and such," or "Could you be available for such and such?" she would say, "I need a start time and an end time." So,
Well, I think that's really good because having on time is a good thing, and I like to appreciate that because we do the for recycle, right, on time. Because everybody get disciplined. You know, you come up with, oh, it gets that information. Things all this.
The attitude for the whole thing, yes.
yeah. And when you're dealing with a big group of people, especially people that maybe you don't know, you give an inch and people will take a mile.
For should have standards, go the standards.
Right. So I guess a lot of this is boundary setting. Setting strong boundaries.
I want to thank you for all these years, because you remind everybody about it, you like that one.
You want to know the secret,
I feel
Elliot?
so guilty. Oh my God, yes, I have to remind everybody.
Secret? I put all these events in my digital calendar, and I just set an automatic email reminder. So every deadline 2 weeks before, I just get an email notification. So.